You like to watch the Cowboys. I like to watch them lose.
If in every locker room you go into, it smells like shit, it just might be you.
Ironically, that dog did more during the draft than Bill.
Technically, they're both burgers, but they could not be more different.
Shador Sanders, you are officially a Raider. I'm just going to say that.
Their only Super Bowl appearance was before man supposedly walked on the moon.
But actually, no, I don't feel bad for the Giants. They got themselves in that situation.
All I can tell you, the vibe here isn't good.
From Wondery, I'm Annie Agar, and this is The Offensive Line. Welcome to The Offensive Line, you guys. We're here to make some picks, talk some shit, and hopefully make you some money. We might also hate on the Cowboys for no apparent reason whatsoever, just because I like to. Guys, I'm Annie Agar, here with our guest this week, co-host of Wondery's own Alternate Routes. You know him, I know him, longtime NFL and sports broadcaster, Trey Wingo. Trey, thank you for joining us today.
Annie, how are you? Let's talk some shit. Let's
Absolutely.
Get it going.
I feel like this is what you do best.
It's good to know that I do something well. So if that's it, then fine, so be it.
Let's start with quarterbacks because, as I mentioned, the preseason performance has been the talk of the town lately. They've been breaking the internet. Caleb Williams out there making big plays. Hate to see it. Burrow is back and he's blonde. And then Mahomes is throwing behind his back. Let's just preface this, though. It was against third stringers, okay? This is getting ridiculous. Every time Mahomes throws, I feel like it's an intrusive thought that won. That's what it feels like. But somehow it works out for him.
Well, that's because he's the best player in the game. It's not close. And I do appreciate fans who have different perspectives on this, as wrong as they are. And, remember, fan is short for fanatic. We'll start with the Mahomes stuff since you brought it up. Since 2001, there have been 125 drives in the NFL postseason where it was the fourth quarter, about a minute left to play, a minute or less left to play, and the team on offense trailed by 7 points or less. Yep. So these are your standard, got to get it done, got to make it happen situations, right? Mm-hmm. On average, of those 125 drives since 2001, only 40% of those drives have ended with the team getting the points they needed to either win the game or extend the game and send it into overtime. Only one quarterback is perfect. His name is Patrick Mahomes. 7 out of 7 in those situations. So we can have whatever sort of opinionated thought process conversations about why you think Josh Allen is better or why you like Lamar Jackson or why you're a big believer in Joe Burrow. I don't know what else to tell you. If you want to come at me with some other information, all you other quarterback lovers, go for it. But I got the receipts and I'm riding 15 as long as he's a carbon-based life form.
The craziest thing about that, the stats there, are that every one of those comebacks is probably against the Bills. Okay, yeah. Speaking of stats and quarterback stats, I know the only stat that really matters to you specifically is quarterback wins. Am I right? Is that?
Yeah, it's my least favorite stat in the world.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. It's the only one that matters, Trey. So first bet coming off of that. Which quarterbacks play, stellar play this year, will obviously be the single cause for their team surpassing their win total. Here are the win totals, and you can tell me which team you think will go over on quarterback wins. So the first one we have is Bears go over 9.5 wins, Chicago over 9.5, Cincinnati over 10.5, or Kansas City over 11.5. Which one do you see happening?
The Chiefs won 11 games last year with the worst receiving core Patrick Mahomes has ever had. They led the league in drops, and they still won 11. And they kept beating themselves. I mean, you go to that Raiders game on Christmas Day, there were 2 Patrick Mahomes turnovers within 7 seconds, and those were the only 2 touchdowns that the Raiders scored all game. And that's not going to happen again, right? Those things aren't going to happen. I mean, the Chiefs didn't allow a completion to the starting quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, after the first quarter, and somehow the Raiders still won that game. I'll take the over on the Chiefs. I'm going to take the over on all 3. I'll take the over. I don't know if I've ever seen a rookie quarterback taken number 1 overall walk into a better situation than what Caleb Williams is walking into. So Caleb walks in with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. They draft Romeo Odunes, and oh, by the way, Bears defense was top 10 last year. Okay. If Justin Fields walked into that room, he'd still be the Bears quarterback, but he didn't walk into that situation. So if Caleb Williams fails, with all due respect, it's all on Caleb Williams. So
Yeah.
I'm probably going to take the over there as well. Now, the Bengals are interesting, right? Because every year it seems like we have this team that goes from worst to first. And it looks like that would be a perfect situation for Cincinnati, right? They lose Joe Burrow for most of that season. They still finished 9-8, but it's last place in a very competitive AFC North. They get Joe Burrow back. They still have Jamar Chase. They still have T. Higgins. So you would think, okay, that's probably going to bode pretty well for them. I'll just say this about the Bengals. From someone that I trust, I texted him this summer and said, what's going on in Cincinnati? And he says, all I can tell you, the vibe here isn't good. So, the whole T. Higgins thing, why was that? Well, we need to not pay T. Higgins and just have him come back because we got to pay Jamar Chase. Well, they're not paying Jamar Chase. So what was that drama about? And, Mike Brown, the owner, is as old school as it comes. And he's like, well, now it's not time to negotiate. No, it's still time to negotiate. You can still do a deal for Jamar Chase, and you should. So I think that's an issue. I am also a little concerned about Eminem at quarterback. I mean, I love Joe, don't get me wrong, but he's going to these fashion shows this summer. He comes back with the dyed blonde hair. Something's not right in Cincinnati.
I completely agree. Joe Burrow might be off the deep end. We don't know yet. I will take the Chiefs as well. I think that's a great pick. Just because, and I hate to say it, but it's the Chiefs at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You are a co-host of Alternate Routes, a show about what ifs, which plays very well into the next thing I want to talk about. There are several teams in the league that have had a couple things happen to them. And man, I would think that they'd want to do over. That's just personal opinion. But this is real life, and you have to face the consequences of what happens. And sometimes it's not glamorous. A couple what ifs. Let's start with the Panthers, who had the choice between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Obviously, they went with Bryce Young. They're probably thinking, what could have happened if we got CJ instead of Bryce? The Jets definitely wondering what would have happened if Aaron lasted longer than 4 plays. Maybe didn't even trade for him at all. And then the Bills might be wondering, should we have kept Stephon Diggs until he has a temper tantrum in the Texans locker room, I'm sure. But Trey, who will prove their decisions were right and close the door on their alternate route? See what we did there?
Oh, I like it. Cross-pollination. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Check out the show wherever you get your podcast with myself and Kevin Frazier.
Love that. Carolina over 5.5 wins, the Jets over 10.5, or the Bills over 9.5.
No one questioned Bryce's football acumen.
Yeah.
He's small.
Yeah.
He's tiny. He's wee. Okay. He's not going to grow. So, and I don't look at them and think they got substantially better this offseason. They lost their best pass rusher, Brian Burns. He goes to the Giants. Again, I'm going to hold all my Jets discussions till later on in the program because I have a lot to say there.
Love it.
I think the Bills will be okay. I think I would take the over on the Bills. I get it. It's a brand new wide receiving core, basically from top to bottom.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Stephon Diggs, right? And throwing a temper tantrum. Well, Stephon Diggs is a game-breaking wide receiver. Let's just be clear. Yeah. But something's not right, okay? Something wasn't right in Minnesota, and something wasn't right in Buffalo the last 2 years. And I'll defer to my good friend, Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis, who gave me one of the greatest lines of wisdom in the history of my 20-plus years of doing this. He said, if in every locker room you go into it smells like shit, it just might be you.
Someone put that on Stephon Diggs' car. That is a bumper sticker if I've ever heard one.
I mean, look, it should have worked out in Minnesota. It should have worked out in Buffalo. It didn't. So you have to ask, why is it not working out for a receiver this talented?
I do want to touch on the Panthers real quick because I'm taking them over 5.5 wins. I think, first of all, Frank Reich, we know, lasted probably as long with the Panthers as Bryce Young lasted in the pocket. A couple seconds, not very long. Yeah. But it wasn't a complete failure, Panthers fans. You guys had 2 wins, neither of which you were leading in the fourth quarter, which is crazy stat to me. But like you said, different wide receiver room. And Deontay Johnson, obviously not the best last couple games with the Steelers, but I do think it will revamp the wide receiver room. We'll see how the new coach does. We'll see how good old Dave does over there. But I will take them over 5.5 wins. That seems really sadly low, you guys, Panthers fans. You guys had 7.5 last season, and that was bad.
The NFC South is such a somebody come take a division. Yeah, somebody can step up there and surprise somebody.
I feel like all those teams could play each other and none of them would win somehow. When we come back, it's time to get a little bit more offensive, not that we haven't already, and we're going to make some bets. Stay tuned. They tried to make a cologne, but they picked the wrong condiment and the wrong quarterback. I made a cologne too. Cranberry sauce. Bouncy. I'm wearing it right now. Unfortunately, podcasts don't allow you to smell yet. You don't ask anything of anyone. You're not just a side, you're the main course. Parfum du Cranberry. Annie Agar, number 8. See, that's why I think Cranberry is so much better. It's the smell of home for me, okay? It's the smell of losers. Who knew losers could be so sweet? But I do want to know, and look, I'm even wearing the Lions shirt. I do want to know, Trey, what you think of this whole Mayo Cologne fiasco.
First of all, kudos to Hellmann's for taking the ball and
Great
running
marketing.
with it and getting great marketing. So good that we're all talking about it.
Right,
That being
that's
said,
true.
mayonnaise is the spawn of Satan. It is the devil's secret sauce. It is disgusting. It is gross. It is vile. I will never, ever eat mayonnaise. I cannot stand it. Good for Will Levis and Hellmann's. Run with it. I'm happy for you guys. Keep that nasty away from me.
That's so ironic because that's exactly how I talk about Will Levis. Just kidding. Just kidding, guys. It is disgusting. I'm guessing you're not a deviled eggs fan then. That's just even
hell
worse.
no.
Those are like the two worst textures in the world combined.
Gross. Ah,
Are you ready for some offensive lines, Trey?
let's do it.
We're both Cowboys fans here, technically. You like to watch the Cowboys. I like to watch them lose. So we're going to do, which I don't, the hate from the Cowboys as Packers fans, I don't know what it stems from. If it's the Dez not catch, actually, sorry. If it's like Mike McCarthy's thing, if it's just
McCarthy
the divisional
for
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
McCarthy for sure.
I think it's just all those
for
things
sure.
combined.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about how the Cowboys season will end, and then when we can start
Poorly.
laughing at Cowboys fans. Correct. But how this is the different levels of poor that it could end in. It could end in missing the playoffs at plus 170, lose in the wild card at plus 200, lose in the NFC Championship game at plus 750, or lose in the Super Bowl at plus 1400.
They haven't made it to a conference championship game while you're alive. So, okay, they're not going
emphasis
there.
on that. Nope.
They're not going there. And here's why they're not going to win the division. They won it last year. No team has repeated in the NFC East over the last 20 seasons. It's the longest streak in the active streak in the NFL. So because they won it last year, by rule, you're out.
Is this a Washington division?
I think they could be the team that goes from worst to first. I think they could do it.
Wow. I actually said that on the last pod, so I fully agree with you.
The Eagles, there's no way they should have collapsed the way they did last year. So as good as that roster is and Howie's done a great job putting it together, something's not right there. But back to the Cowboys, they're not. So I would say they're probably going to miss the playoffs. That would be, that's the bet I would take just based on history. This division is not one where you can win again. And the Cowboys, all of the Cowboys' problems are created by the Dallas Cowboys. So, Jerry Jones says he's all in, and by all in, he meant all in on doing nothing. They have contract issues with Dak. They have contract issues with Micah Parsons. They have contract issues with CeeDee Lamb. I think the CeeDee Lamb deal will get done, but the Dallas Cowboys are victims of being the Dallas Cowboys. All of their problems stem from the decision 3 or 4 years ago to pay Ezekiel Elliott that ridiculous contract before they took care of their quarterback. When they knew they were going to split time between Zeke and Tony Pollard 3 years ago.
And then Jerry didn't play Tony Pollard at all because he looked
Correct.
bad if he didn't play Zeke. Crazy to me.
Yeah, the Cowboys are really good at self-inflicted wounds. So I think it's the most likely that they will miss the postseason.
This is going to be different for me because I'm going to play devil's advocate here. The one thing that the Cowboys do correctly is evaluate offensive linemen. I cannot believe this is happening again. Twitter videos are going around this week. Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe looked insane. They gave Max Crosby a hard time. Tyler Guyton did, which is very hard to do with Max Crosby.
Correct.
There was one point, and people said that he wouldn't be good as a rookie. They were calling him a bust already. The man is 6'8", 330 pounds, and looked incredible. So I will give it to the Cowboys. Offensive linemen, in terms of that, they have an eye for it. Everything else, though, they suck.
Here's the only thing I would say, because I've seen a lot of Hall of Fame careers in preseason turn into that dude can't play in the regular season. So, we're at this time of the year where we're so hyped, Annie. We're so excited because we're so close to having football back that we see one play and we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I had people sending me videos of, look at this throw by Anthony Richardson in camp. And I'm like, okay, let's get to a game. And then it turns out the most athletic, strongest, fastest quarterback we've ever seen in the history of the NFL couldn't finish a game. So this is my let's pump the brakes on preseason or training camp throws and hype, okay? Because an NFL preseason game is the same as an NFL regular season game in the same way a tofu burger is the same as a Wagyu beef burger. Technically, they're both burgers, but they could not be more different. Bo Nix has it. I've seen it a lot in preseason, not translate to anything in the regular season.
Bears fans out there, are you listening? Because Caleb Williams had a little reverse run in from like the 20-yard line and people were losing their minds. And I'm pretty sure somebody tweeted this too. Justin Fields did the exact same thing in the fourth quarter on fourth down against the 49ers last year. And you guys didn't say a word because he kept his head down and just went into running back mode. Now Caleb Williams keeps his eyes up on the field against third stringers, a terrible defense, and he's like a god. So everybody just calm down. Listen to Trey. Take Trey's advice. Calm down.
Deep breaths.
And just enjoy the free football for a little bit. Have a beer or two and relax. Talking about freaking out, another thing that people freak out about other than preseason is the draft. We see players drafted and we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the next Pat Mahomes. This is our guy. This is our franchise guy. You have covered numerous drafts, and the one that sticks out to me the most, as probably it all does for all of us, was the 2020 COVID draft, where you were the only in-studio host used by ESPN. Everybody else was doing remote appearances.
Yeah.
You were only in studio. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that was a draft. That was crazy to me. What was the most memorable thing covering that draft for you?
Bill Belichick's dog. Sitting in his chair when we went to it.
Ironically, that dog did more during the draft than Bill.
Probably, and over the last 3 seasons too. The thing about that draft, it was just so unique on so many levels. And I really just, you have to give credit to guys like Brian Ryder, who does the draft every year for ESPN. And they, in a span of 40 days, they went from having this elaborate setup in Las Vegas to 500 plus remote setups for people and families. The thing that I remember most about that draft, like that was normally the draft is insane. That was like the happy draft. That was like the family draft. Everyone was there with their families and you got a bunch of insights into coaches and players that you would have never gotten before. And it gave us the greatest Cliff Kingsbury flex of all time. When
that house.
We made sure that the house, you could see the fire. By the way, it was a fire pit in Las Vegas, in Arizona in late April. It was 110 outside, but he had the fire pit on just for visual effect. Let's just be honest about it.
He probably had his AC on too. So we're just burning gas and electric at the same time. Terrible. We should have known something was wrong. But Washington, good luck with them. Have fun. I don't think there are houses like that in Washington.
No, they're more of Center Hall Colonial.
In the D.C. area. Yeah.
Center Hall Colonial. Yeah.
Also, a big remarkable thing in that draft, and guys, I'm not going to talk about trading up for Jordan Love, even though that was the best move in the draft. The worst move, which will still haunt them to this day probably, was the Eagles taking Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. But there are a couple wide receivers that were in that draft. So I'm going to read you some prop bets, and you have to pick which wide receiver from that 2020 draft class will hit the over. We have CeeDee Lamb over 1,350 yards, Brandon Ayuk over 950 yards, or Justin Jefferson over 1,300 yards.
Well, I think based on sort of the situations, I think CeeDee Lamb is probably in the best situation because he and Dak have an established history. Look, Justin Jefferson's the best receiver we just talked about, and I don't think there's much question there, but there are major concerns at the quarterback. We already know that JJ's out for the year, and Sam Darnold has the potential, but Sam Darnold's had potential since he was the 3rd overall pick in 2018. It's time for that potential to turn into performance. So
like 17
Yeah, exactly. And as much as Dak's playoff problems are a problem, he's really good in the regular season. So of all of those three, because we still don't know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk, who turned down over $32 million a year to go to New England. It's insane. So I have to default to CeeDee Lamb there.
I think I have to agree with you on this one, Trey. As much as I love Justin Jefferson, like we said, that quarterback situation, I can't bet. I can't put money on it. Okay. So CeeDee Lamb, as much as I hate the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, he's going to get him the ball. He's top 3 wide receiver. He's going to get CeeDee the ball. I'm taking CeeDee on the over. I do want to talk about the Vikings for a hot second though, because the Vikings might be cursed. I've seen this all over Twitter this past week, how are Vikings fans surviving? I really don't know. I hope you guys are all doing a little mental health check on your Vikings friends because they're not doing well. Their starting wide receiver gets a DUI, and then 2 guys go down in their secondary. 2 DBs are injured the first and second day of practice. And then, of course, everyone knows J.J. McCarthy out for the season. Absolutely traumatizing. Your first round quarterback is out for the season. But it didn't just start the past couple weeks, okay? Minnesota has a history of terrible things happening to this franchise. Everybody thinks, the Vikings just might have bad luck lately since Kirk Cousins. No. Let me tell you some of the worst things to happen in Vikings history, okay? Worst things to happen to the Vikings possibly ever. The Cardinals Hail Mary, first one. Bounty Gate against Favre, that happened. Obviously, we know that. The Kirk Cousins torn Achilles, that was a recent one. This is probably the most renowned one. You all know what I'm about to bring up. Trading like 500 draft picks for Herschel Walker. We can't forget about that. And then this speaks for itself, Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Bradford. What is going on in Minnesota? The winters are bad enough out there. Now you have to deal with a freaking curse. You guys, it would be traumatizing if you weren't in my division. Because I'm trying to feel bad for you, but I can't have that much sympathy for someone within my division. So it sucks to be you right now. I hope you find the help that you need, and good luck to you this season. But
you didn't even mention the Blair Walsh project.
The Blair, right?
That easy chippy that would have won the game against the, was it the Panthers? Yeah, no, it was the Seahawks. It was against the Seahawks. It was against the Seahawks in 2015.
Minnesota, man, I hope that curse wears off at some point. When we come back, you guys, we've got a few more bets, and things are going to get even more offensive, so stick around. Have you guys been hungry for some college football? Yeah, me too. Luckily, we finally get a taste this weekend. So don't miss any of the action. Jump right in at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's a small but mighty slate of games for Week 0, including a big matchup in Ireland. This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. So enjoy the ride now, all the way through the expanded playoff. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, and it looks like they have some pretty good odds this season, so I'm taking the Buckeyes to win the Big Ten at plus 155 because it is the Ohio State University. Plus, all newbies getting into the college football spirit, here's something extra special. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today using the code TOL. That's code TOL for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball.
I heard, Trey, the odds of you being on a Hawaii golf course instead of coming and filming this episode were like minus 500. Is that true?
Well, we're not out in Hawaii at the moment. So the odds were very much in your favor that I would actually be here. But I did just get off the golf course.
I love it. At least you're consistent. Speaking of golf courses, who is most likely to be on a golf course instead of playing in the playoffs? Our options are Falcons to miss the playoffs at plus 170, Packers to miss the playoffs at plus 125, and the Texans to miss the playoffs at plus 150. Which team do you see swinging into the bushes instead of making the playoffs? If you say the Packers, I am canceling this podcast immediately.
No, I'm not saying the Packers. I think they're probably going to win the division.
Let's go.
So that's tough because if I had to pick one, I would pick Atlanta. But I think Atlanta can win that division. The Texans should be better. I will say this about Houston, right? Everyone's in love with Houston right now. Let's see it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really good teams, really good coaches, really good quarterbacks. You can say whatever you want about Mike Tomlin. Dude's never had a losing season. We're talking about a guy who perpetually knows how to win. All that being said, if I had to pick, I would pick Atlanta just because that division is wonky. But I really do like Atlanta. I think that I would like to see Houston do it again for them, all in on D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud. But you can't say that everything we've seen so far would be an indication that they would be the team that would miss. So out of those three, I would have by default, and I don't feel great about it, land on Atlanta.
I'd agree with that. And Texans, like the only way that division would be tough is if Anthony Richardson is who we think he is if he stays healthy, if the Colts pick it up, because I really wanted to see him last year, and everybody that I'm hearing, the Colts are going to be a lot better this year if he stays healthy. That's a big if though.
Again, couldn't finish a game. So
that's tough. Let's talk a little bit more quarterback talk. The Raiders, as you guys may have heard, named Gardner Minshew their starting quarterback on Sunday. Yikes. It was between AOC and Gardner Minshew. This might be the most offensive thing in the entire podcast, naming Gardner Minshew your starting quarterback. But after watching Daniel Jones in the preseason also, and the Steelers quarterback situation, which you mentioned earlier, it might not be that bad, Raiders fans. It could be worse. So I know you're against quarterback wins, but how about quarterback losses? So first of all, let's talk about the Giants, Steelers, Raiders quarterback situation, and then we're going to go under some wins here. What do you think about those quarterbacks?
Well, let's start with the Raiders. Let's be honest about it. They named him the starter when they picked him up in the offseason. Okay. Like Aiden O'Connell, let's remember, he in that December game against the Chiefs, the Raiders won despite him not completing a pass after the first quarter. Okay. So that tells you where we're headed with Aiden O'Connell. Okay. So Gardner Minshew was going to win that game, that job. It was just a matter of time. I am not giving up on Justin Fields at all. I think Justin Fields can win that job in Pittsburgh. And if you think about it from the Steelers' perspective, it makes way more sense for them to be invested in Justin Fields than it does in Russell Wilson.
Right.
I mean, he's a decade younger. Neither one of them costs them a lot of money right now because Denver's paying him $37.5 million to be the Steelers quarterback.
Just to not play.
And Justin's on a rookie deal. So if you look at it that way, you're like, okay, if we were going to invest in one of these quarterbacks, let's try and develop the younger one on a rookie deal with a lot of decent weapons around him. And I think the Pittsburgh defense is still going to be good enough. So I think Justin Fields is going to walk away from that one. Daniel Jones is not turning into a different version of Daniel Jones. Let's just be honest about it. Okay. What he is, and that's not changing. And we saw that again in the preseason game. Safety? Hell no. I'm going to turn this safety into a pick six. 2 points giving up is way better than 7. Just so you know, do that. Do the math, take the sack.
Somebody teach Daniel Jones math.
And speaking of math, when people look at $160 million for Daniel Jones, he's never seeing $160 million. Let's just be honest about it. This is a 1 year or 2 year deal, and then whatever. All these contracts are backloaded with this money that these players will never see. It's just for the agents to show up and say, "Look how much I got this guy." They're never seeing any of that money. They're never seeing it.
Actually, no, I don't feel bad for the Giants. They got themselves in that situation. Don't feel bad for them at all. The Raiders, Shador Sanders, you are officially a Raider. I'm just going to say that. Next year, good luck everybody this year. The Raiders might go with Gardner Minshew. They might go 6-11 instead of 5-12 at this point. I wish you guys luck. Have fun this season. You probably won't.
And AP's a friend of mine, Antonio. I hope he does a great job. But yeah, there are concerns.
Okay, just to recap, and we did actually agree on a couple, which is impressive for us. We both had the Chiefs over 11.5 wins. We had CD over 1,350 yards, and we had the Falcons to miss the playoffs. Here's where we differed a little bit. I had the Panthers over 5.5 wins. I had the Cowboys to lose in the wild card and the Raiders under 6.5. Trey, you had, and remember this because we're going to keep track during the season, you had Bills over 9.5, Cowboys to miss the playoffs completely, and the Giants under 6.5 wins. Technically, you did say both about the Raiders and the Giants, but we don't throw that much shade. I do have a line that I don't cross, but it happens a lot more than you think. Okay, we're going to keep track of that throughout the season, and we'll see who had the better bets. Before we let you go here, Trey, this is a fun venting session for us. I would like you, and we started off with no offense, but if you say no offense, you're not actually being offensive. Everybody knows that. So we're going to start it off with no offense and then go on our little rant here. So first off, no, and this is so funny because you just brought it up. I was going to say, no offense, but Daniel Jones' agent getting him, like we said, $160 million off of Saquon, 15 passing TDs, and some random Giants playoff appearance. This should be studied by law schools everywhere because how this man got away with that, I will never know. There's no way on God's green earth he should have gotten that kind of money. Like you said, he might not even see most of it. The man doesn't even know how to slide correctly. That's how he hurt his neck the first time. In this preseason game, he went like head first again. He doesn't know that a safety would be a smart smarter choice than throwing a pick six or an interception. I don't understand Daniel Jones. I don't think any of us do. His agent, man, give that man whatever he wants because he's a genius.
I agree. And this is going to be a double dose of bad news for New York football fans. No offense, Jets fans and the hype train, but are you kidding me? Let's just do this, Annie. Let's just logically apply what has happened, right? The Jets are a notoriously awful franchise. That's just a fact, okay? There's a reason the acronym Just End the Season exists, okay? So they're infamous for failure, okay? They hype up and they fail. Their only Super Bowl appearance was before man supposedly walked on the moon. And that's a joke to all the conspiracy theorists out there. I absolutely believe we walked on the moon. Link the YouTube.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, link the YouTube links in comments. Okay, there you go. The YouTube clips. But so this is the Jets' plan, right? To finally get over the hump of always failing in the playoffs. They bring in a quarterback who it could be on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in the NFL. I believe that, and is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but notoriously fails in the playoffs. Okay. Yep. I mean, Super Bowl 45 happened. Absolutely it did. They ran the table as a wild card. And ever since then, it has been choke central for the Packers.
Mostly to the 49ers. I am unfortunately very aware.
Giants the very next year when they almost went undefeated. And they couldn't get that game going. The Packers with Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback once lost an NFC championship game to a 49ers team that ran it all but 8 times. They only threw it 8 times in that game.
This was a dumb segment. Let's move.
Okay. They had the warm weather Bucks at Lambeau Field for the NFC championship game, and they couldn't find a way to beat them at their place. Look, you had Jimmy G go to the snow at Lambeau a couple of years ago and walk out of there with a win. So I find it somewhat hilarious that the Jets as a franchise that notoriously stumbles are going to turn everything around by bringing in a quarterback that notoriously stumbles in the postseason. It's a match made in hell. And I just, the hype, because let's be honest, Damian Woody said it the other day. If you trade for Aaron Rodgers, it is the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers has visited the Super Bowl one time, and that was 14 years ago. So I don't see how a soon to be 41-year-old coming off Achilles surgery with his own set of issues in the postseason is going to be the guy that turns around a team with their own set of issues when it comes to the postseason. No offense. My
one Packers Super Bowl t-shirt that I have has holes in it. It looks like it was my dad's t-shirt. That's a problem. That is a problem. Yeah. When it's that old, I totally agree with that. It's a match made in hell. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers. That was great. That was my favorite segment of the week. Just talking about how much the Packers sucked.
I mean, just make it make sense. Just make it make sense to me. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
That's what I think every time I start talking. Trey, thank you so much for joining us. This is great. I hope you come back. I hope we haven't said too many offensive lines to make you not come back. We're family now. We're Wondery family.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
The next time I'm on, I'll be able to talk about the thing that I can't talk about right now, which is happening soon. So I can't talk about it now.
Exciting coming
very soon, it's going to be a very big thing that I'm very happy about, and I'll be able to talk about it, but I can't talk about it just yet.
That is it this week. You guys on the offensive line, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch our full podcast episode on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. As always, you guys, Des didn't catch it. I'll see you next week.